All right. So, hi, welcome everyone. I am so glad that you have taken the time to join me today for How to End Emotional Eating, a Parent's Guide. So, I'm going to invite you to start right away by opening up the chat box and just check in. Where are you joining us from today? I'm here in Virginia, and we'll just, see where folks are joining from. As well as, how about this? What concern do you have about emotional eating in your home and your family? So while you're finding the chat box and getting acquainted with that, we're going to dive right in and let's do this. So, what to expect? So, today we're going to be talking all about emotional eating and how to help in our home, how to help without harm. For expectation management, because I really believe in that, you're going to get some really simple answers, things that you can start doing right away within the first 35 minutes. We will be here up to an hour today to be able to have direct conversation at the end. So, yes, we're going to be chitty chatting directly. And so we will be out by the 60-minute mark. This is going to be a great use of your time because you're going to be able to start creating change today. You're going to find some signature sauce in here with some humor and stress relief because just because we're talking about health and eating does not mean that it's going to be boring. I do invite you to take notes because what it is that we write down does get integrated, and that is how we take it along with us in those days and in those moments where we've got a whole lot of other stress going on. And you're like, oh, I can pull that back out from the vault. We already talked about the chat box. Please put your questions there and please make sure that you include a little bit of context about where we are in the discussion so that we can pick that thread right back up again. And I will answer all those questions and then also have the conversation at the end. The replay is going to be available for a couple of days. So just in case you're catching it after the fact, and you will be able to find out all the details about Family in Focus. We'll touch on that at the end today. So, this class is for you if you want to raise a healthy whole family. You know that, you don't want any more of this stress in your home, and you know what that is. You're worried about your family's eating habits. You know that diets and control just are not working in your household. You don't want to keep that going. And you're just tired of the current approach to emotional eating, to weight management, to how everything feels like it's just a diet in different clothing. And this class is for you if relationships are really important to you. So you're in the right place. Let's just put it out there right now. If you're done fighting over what's healthy, you're really still worried about your children, their health, their eating habits, and you're not sure how to help without making those relationships worse. So whether we're talking about relationships with food, with body, the relationships that you share, so after this class, you're going to be 100% clear on what's really going on behind all of the eating habits and understand why all of the traditional tip sheets and all the help that everyone's trying to give is not working for what we're seeing in our homes right now. And then we're also going to introduce the three truly simple steps that are going to completely change your family's relationships. And really, these are the three steps that we practice over and over again within Family in Focus to move from stress to connection at the table. So, for introductions, hi, I'm Wendy, also known as Dr. Wendy Schofer, MD. I'm a board certified pediatrician, lifestyle physician. I've been in clinical practice for over 20 years now, and that has ranged from my work in the military, where I have practiced with family members of all ages, to civilian and different hospital based and clinic based practices. I am a proud mom of two, and I specialize in family emotional health, relationships, eating habits, and growth. And that is primarily through my private coaching practice, which is Family in Focus. I have worked with over 100 families now to become healthier from the inside out through our work together in Family in Focus, working with parents just like you. So let's just put a little nod out there to my lawyers and the disclaimer. So while I'm a doctor, this is not medical care. It's education, it's coaching, it's skill building, it's real life tools. It is not medical advice. So please keep your relationship with your doctor. And invite them to come and visit with me and to connect with me because I think that there is so much that we can do together. The other thing about me is that I am a little bit different. I'm not afraid to call out the BS that we are just surrounded by right now. And you'll also find throughout this chat today that this is not your typical emotional eating is bad kind of talk because, well, quite honestly, that approach isn't working and we need something different. And so calling out that means that I'm actually calling out what isn't working in our families, what's creating more stress in our day-to-day lives, and actually helping families connect with what works, which starts with us, okay, including me, being very real, showing all of the imperfections because well, that's what makes us real. It's not about getting up and telling people what to do. It's about building that conversation and working through things together. And we'll also acknowledge that I have a love language and it's humor. So I became an improv comedian a few years ago for, quite honestly, the stress relief. And it has completely impacted my ability to speak up, so call things out, and also say what needs to be said for our families. So let's talk less about me and more about you. Okay. So you have concerns about emotional eating. Perhaps you're, keeping an eye on your kids' eating habits. And you're like, okay, is that normal? What do I do? How do I change that? You want to raise your kids without shame and recognizing that that's really kind of running in the background for so many of the healthy habits approaches. It's about shame and control and pressure. And you're like, yeah, I don't want that for my family. You want to stop worrying about what should I be saying? What are the right words to use or what should I avoid saying when I'm concerned about food and habits and bodies, and I don't even know how to have these conversations. And you want to feel in control without having to micromanage and be in control of everything. And lastly, you want your kids to develop healthy relationships with food, their body, and you. I mean, who's nodding right now? It sounds familiar. Yeah, you're my people. These are the struggles that we have and unwind together within Family in Focus. And you're going to hear yourself in the stories today. And I have a sneaky feeling you're going to recognize you're doing a whole lot right now with keeping an eye and, the approach about trying to fix the food and the access and the portions, and then, of course, addressing emotions. It's really stressful. It's really stressful. It puts so much on our plates as parents. And, when we have stress so often leads to it leads us to seek comfort in unhealthy ways. And so this is why we do not approach or, we don't start with addressing emotional eating with fixing kids. In Family in Focus, we start with supporting you, the parent, because quite honestly, you are already doing so very much. We need to change our approach. So, we already talked about that current approach to emotional eating on how there's so much that we're just trying to fix all the different variables and all the different factors. And quite honestly, stress, 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 stress. It's just very directive. And that current approach also causes so much friction. Parents come to me within Family in Focus saying these things all the time. Which one sounds like today's friction for you? Being the food police, about having fights all the time, just feeling exhausted. And one I hear over and over again, I feel like I'm failing. Either I feel like I'm failing as a parent, I feel like I'm failing my kids, I feel like I'm failing. Look at this experience that I've had with my own weight and eating habits. But I'm here to tell you it's not you. We've been told to fix ourselves in a culture that just sets us up to struggle. The shift is really about changing the environment and not blaming ourselves. So there's a really simple, easy answer why the usual advice just isn't working. Well, because we keep on thinking emotional eating is the problem. It's not. It's not. We're working overtime to try to change our kids and their habits and their emotions. And it all feels like it's coming from love. And, and it's not enough because it is not actually the problem. And neither are you, neither is your child, neither is their weight, neither is any of your history. That's not the problem. So the reason why is because we are all emotional eaters. And this is the part that all the diets and the feeding plans just completely overlook. They overlooked that we're identifying a problem of emotional eating when it's something that we all do and it's all normal. Just want to have you just like sit here with for that, sit here for a moment with that. What we're doing is normal. And it's time that we flip that script about what emotional eating really is, which is what we're going to talk about today, as well as what to do about it. And that's what we do within Family in Focus. We flip that script and we focus on what we actually need: emotions and connection. Before we get ahead, let's talk about how we're all emotional eaters. So, if you think about when you're eating, how often there are emotions that are just right there with you at the table, in the kitchen, wherever it is that you're eating, even in the car as you're driving at your desk. We all have emotions. So emotions really kind of drive our behaviors, our habits, the things that we do. And think about this. When we come together at a party, when we're in celebration, or like, this is awesome. Now let's eat. Yeah, that's emotional eating. Thanksgiving, absolutely. That's emotional eating. And it's one of the forms that we don't think about because it's a positive type of emotional eating where we're coming together in celebration, communion. That the very, concept of communion is coming together in safety and celebration and eating. Yeah. And noticing how when we eat, this is also signaling safety. This is a very important thing to remember. Well, how often we're experiencing stress throughout our lives and we're looking for safety. So, yes, food kind of goes both ways with that. It's signaling it, it's also something that we're seeking. We're seeking that safety, which is often why when we think about emotional eating, it's often about seeking the comfort. Or, we're trying to comfort an emotion that we're feeling. We feel bad. I don't want to feel that anymore. Make me feel better. Right there's food, of course. Or I want to avoid feeling an emotion. Well, right there's food. It sure, helps me do something else instead. Or numbing, distraction. And let's also talk about entertainment. Okay. So I think about, when you go to the movies and, of course, there's that habit built in the context and the environment. Like you go get your ticket and you get your popcorn too. Well, that's also a part of the experience. It's part of the entertainment. This is all normal. And so I want to be able to shout that out loud and clear. Let's normalize emotional eating because that way we can say, hey, let's understand a little bit more about it without it being something about how there's something wrong with us. And so thinking, how does it all make sense? Well, of course, we're experiencing emotional eating. We're coming together in a party, or you know what? I don't feel so good here. I'm feeling sad or mad or irritated or exhausted, and I just want to feel better. My child is feeling anxious and they turn to food. Well, of course, food helps them feel better when they don't feel good. Of course, two of the most powerful words. And so the real heart of this and the truth is that when we have eating habits, if we think about them as behaviors, just things that we do and things that we do repeatedly, behaviors we have repeatedly are habits, they are somehow helping us. And we may not recognize it right away. It may be kind of a weird way. And when I say weird, because how often we will, use the example of turning to food and we're like, oh, I can't believe I ate the whole thing. Like when you say, I'm going to eat one slice of pizza and then it becomes three because there was something else going on. Maybe there was distraction or mindless eating, or maybe you were feeling really exhausted and the pizza helped you feel better. It helped you feel different, not the exhaustion. And then later on, you're like, whoa, I can't believe I did that. It was actually helping you, as I'm calling it a weird way, it was helping you in a way. And thinking about how our eating habits are often coping mechanisms. Well, we have a whole lot that we need to cope with right now, a whole lot of coping with the stress that we're experiencing. So, if we think about eating as a coping mechanism, let's start looking at what it is that we're actually trying to cope with. And that's the thing that's very different from the way that our society has been just approaching eating habits. We keep on thinking that if we just address the access to the food or what it is that we're eating, the portions, the composition of it, well, that's trying to come in and control and manage, but also applying a lot of shame about, like, I can't believe this is a problem still for me after all of these years or for my family. Well, that causes more stress. And remember, what do we do when we feel stress? We look for ways to cope. It makes sense that we come back to emotional eating over and over again. So check this out. How many of you have heard this? Everyone thinks that in order to address your kids' eating habits, they're like, yo, just serve you nutritious meals. Like, come on, it's just what you serve, what comes into the house. Okay, clearly that person is not living with you and your kids because they don't like what it is that we serve. And yet they won't stay out of the pantry. You're like, come on. Like, I'm trying here. And they're arguing about it. And, even I fell into this particular trap, prescribing change. And so in the medical office, when parents would come in and say, I've got these concerns about my child's weight or their eating habits, I'd offer evidence-based prescriptions for portions, for caloric intake, even for the minutes in sweaty exercise, and what is vigorous activity. Go through all of that. And I'd invite them to come back and see me in 3 to 6 months following this expert plan because, nothing changes overnight. So come on back, we'll see what's happening. And thankfully, they came back. They came back and they'd tell me, we're failing this plan. We're fighting. I'm trying to make food that my kids will not eat. I don't like to work out. And now I'm trying to get my kids to work out. And you know how that's going. And I'm finding candy wrappers under the bed. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You too? Me too. Yeah. And so, what I was hearing from parents, I was like, hold on, this is exactly what I'm experiencing too. We're all trying to follow the best laid plans, and it's not working because we were completely missing the mark on what families actually need, including my own family. And there was so much shame when, going in to like clean up and you're like, dude, what's the deal with all that candy wrapper under the bed? And I mean, they didn't even save me any peanut butter cups. And there's also this sense of failure that both parents and kids were, feeling and appreciating, just being like, we're failing this. And I'm here to tell you loud and clear, we're not failing the plans. We've just been, kind of like diagnosing problems that aren't the actual issue, prescribing plans that aren't fitting what our families need right now. And that's the thing. The healthy habits, the guidelines, the tip sheets, all the expert guidance just doesn't fit in our homes, our unique families. It's all the things that we're like, this just doesn't work. And it's creating fights that you're done with. You don't want anymore. And you may notice how these are the same approaches that just never worked for you either, because we've just been focusing on the food, the weight, the habits, the people, us, and each and every one of us is doing the very best that we can. We are not the problem. We're just experiencing more and more stress with these plans that don't work. So let's call it out. The real problem is the stress. If we see that our eating habits are actually normal and normal coping mechanisms as we're dealing with stress, well, how can that completely change our approach? When you're looking and going, hey, is this a concern with this emotional eating? Like I'm spotting this. Well, what if you look at it as a coping mechanism and looking at it as something that has stress running underneath the surface? It's switching from focusing on food and focusing on weight to focusing on what is it that we really want to create. And that's really the heartbeat of family and focus. We see emotional eating not as a food problem, but as a stress problem. And this is what we coach through each and every week. And if you're like, hold on a minute, you just said something there, Wendy, you're like, you just said focus on what we want more of. Well, that's relationships. Now, you may be thinking, these are not opposites. It's not stress and relationships. Okay. And notice how we can switch from focusing and experiencing so much of that stress, all the things that create the stress, to what is it that creates the relationships that we want to have with our food, our bodies, our family, and things that we can share throughout the entire family. And the relationships are what we want and need when we are trying to cope with this chronic daily stress. A relationship focus works because, we all know we have lived it that more control does not create healthier habits. It just creates shame and fear and friction and stress. Focusing on relationships actually decreases stress. Connection decreases stress. You create connection within a relationship. And that's how we're able to change habits, improve health without harm. This is critical. If you're taking those notes right now, make sure you write this down. Focusing on relationships decreases stress, creates or increases connection, and that's how we create changes in habits and improvements in health. So let's understand a little bit about what's going on behind emotional eating. So we've been talking about how emotions kind of like drive our behaviors. So when we're feeling a certain emotion, we tend to do things. Well, this is why unhealthy things can feel really, really good. Let's take a moment and look at this. So I use the example of how my favorite form of emotional eating is, oh gosh, tortilla chips. So I would come home from work and uh, just being exhausted after a long day in the clinic. I'm like, don't talk to me. I'm exhausted right now. And I would stumble over, head straight to the pantry, and my delicious favorite crunchy, salty tortilla chips. They make me feel really, really good. But, think about this. Why was I eating them? I was exhausted, not hungry. Well, eating made me feel better. It made me feel not necessarily less exhausted, but it made me feel something else instead of the exhaustion. So I was basically saying, exhaustion, la, 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 I don't want this anymore. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to feel it. I'm going to turn to tortilla chips. Well, how often I would keep on eating those tortilla chips until I find the bottom of the bag. And so it's like not checking in, like, okay, this was not healthy for me to be doing this. And yet it felt really, really good because I was over the exhaustion. The food comforts. And it also helped me find a form of safety where I could be like, oh, everything is just so much better right now. Well, we all do this. And looking for safety, especially when we're stressed. When we're stressed, we're just trying to make it through the day. We're trying to make it to see another day. And we want to find safety and connection. Well, we often do that in food. And it's very easy because food is all around. So, why have we not been focusing on emotions and relationships? Why does this sound like it's something new? Well, let's just acknowledge it. The vast majority of people are like, yo, emotions, they are uncomfortable. That's just because, okay, we haven't been practicing. Okay, you know how everything feels a little bit uncomfortable when you first start learning, and you're like, oh, the more that I practice, it becomes more comfortable. Think about any kind of sports thing, but even when you go into like, try on new clothing in the dressing room, and you're just kind of like moving all around, you're doing the squats in your jeans, you're like, oh, I had to practice. I had to move around a little bit. It feels more comfortable. Same thing with emotions. And we've been taught that being uncomfortable means that there's something wrong. Oh, touche. No, that is not the case. It just means that we need some practice. The other reason we haven't been doing this is because food is a much easier thing to talk about and to change. You can just say, hey, change your portions. Instead of talking about, let's talk about your emotions or, let's really understand what it is that you're feeling. And so we've got all these different expert guidance from, the clinical practice guidelines and the tip sheets and the health sheets, and of course, every Insta, personality giving you all sorts of information about portions and foods, but it's not changing how we eat because it's not actually getting to the heart. It's just adding more stress. And the other thing is that we often say, I just don't have the time for this. And so I have been teaching about the role of emotional health weight, in weight inclusive conversations, in weight management. There's a whole bunch of different varieties of this, but I've been talking with physicians for the past several years about this. And at the end of the presentation, so remember, it's all about emotional health and its role in clinical conversations. There's one brave physician in the back of the room that will always say, this is great, but I don't have the time for this. Well, what they're really saying is, I'm not comfortable. Going back to that first point, I'm not comfortable with this. I haven't practiced. And that doctor is saying out loud what many of us have grown up with. There is a time and a place for emotions, but it's never here and it's never now. Well, think about this. We actually have an opportunity. We get to save time and heartache through emotional connection. And The other thing about not having the time is that you're really just practicing instant relief. Again, we are looking for ways to be able to cope and to feel better. Well, we want that right away. And so we're practicing that over and over again, looking for the instant relief and, of course, convenience. And there's so many different ways to be able to access convenience. And we keep looking for that over and over again. That's a part of our culture. It's a big part of our culture. You have, a problem, you feel uncomfortable, let's address it and let's do it now. Well, let's call out those cultures and the culture and the cycles. Now, a lot of questions come up about, shouldn't my physician be leading this conversation as we're talking about, emotions and emotional health and eating habits. And I got to tell you, as a physician, I wish that all of my colleagues had the same background and experience, again, with being able to talk about emotions and its role in our stress and our coping and our eating habits. And really, it's something that we've all been struggling with learning how to have these conversations. But let's call out the things that happen in the medical model. Okay, the things that are there in the medical model, we're like, why is this not happening? And that's, really recognize. Again, I am a practicing physician, and I'm going to say this with all of my heart. We are all struggling in healthcare, both as those who are providing the care, as well as each and every one of us, because we are all patients as well. We are all struggling. The system is not working for us. And within the system right now, there is such an insane amount of focus on numbers and measurements and ideals. So you hear about your ideal weight, diets that are masquerading as weight management. You're like, hey, hold on a minute. That sounds very sneaky and familiar, like something that I'm trying to avoid here. And weight stigma. So, how often we're afraid to go in to the doctor because we don't want to hear about weight. That has nothing to do with what it is that I'm seeking care for today. It's not a part of the conversation, and yet it keeps on coming up. And in the medical office, there's such an approach to, identify the problem and fix it, which is why we have prescriptions and plans. But we're like, hey, this isn't actually getting to the heart of the problem. Because remember, with emotional eating is not the problem. Remember that. You are not the problem. Your child is not the problem. The problem is stress and how we're trying to cope with that. Well, those prescriptions and the plans are not addressing that. It's not actually getting to the heart of the problem. And so that's why we often leave with so many more questions and stress and uncertainty and all these things. We're like, what's the next step? And one thing that I hear over and over again from parents is they say, I went into the doctor and I had these concerns about, you know, my child's growth or their eating habits, or, maybe even saying like, hey, there's some anxiety going on here in the background. And perhaps there's labs that are checked or, the full physical. And I say, it's okay, it's normal, or it doesn't need a diagnosis. Not yet. There's nothing to do right now. And you're left with like, I'm sorry, there's nothing to do. That doesn't address the concerns that I have right now about my worries. Just being told, don't worry about it. It's kind of like somebody coming up and just telling me to relax. Do not tell me to relax. That is not the way it works. Okay, nothing to do does not mean that it actually addresses the problem. And so that's where I'm here calling out, again, what I'm calling the BS. So much of the status quo isn't working for us. It hasn't worked for us as we were growing up. And now we're like, yo, this is not working for our kids either. And again, these convenient, focused, quick fixes that never worked. I mean, to be honest with you, it's just like this whole capitalistic, like, I've got a product and I want to sell it to you. That's what's at the heart of it. And so as I'm calling this out, I'm like, let's slow it down. Let's really shine a light on the stress and how to relieve it so that we don't need the quick fixes. This is what you experience within Family in Focus because we're taking a different approach. It's about cooling the stress that's behind the eating habits, the relationships that we actually want to see, and really connecting with what is it that we're experiencing right now, not waiting for a threshold in a diagnosis or labs or, amount of concern in order to say, hey, I hear you. Let's address this. And again, I think this is probably the most important thing, recognizing that the status quo in our culture, which we're all swimming in every day, it's not working. Restriction, diets, control, everything is about this quick fix, easy, convenient hack. So it's not working. Never has. Just leads to more stress and go figure. More eating habits where we're like, oh, I don't know if this is helping me or my family. So let's talk about the simple framework that works for families within Family in Focus. And as we're getting to that framework, okay, the simple steps, just imagine, okay, stress relief so you don't need the quick fixes, how to create the relationship focus, connecting with emotions. If you're like, these are foreign terms to me, that's why we have these three things that you can start doing today. Okay. So if you see that snarky look here, that snarky look is saying the status quo is what's failing. It's not you. It's not your family. All right, what are those three things? Number one, just do it with me. Take a pause and breathe. Deep breath in and out. Yeah. All right, the exhale, the pause, the breath, the exhale. Why this is working. So, thinking about my snow globe here, okay, we have a swirl of chaos and stress and whether you picture it as glitter, confetti, all the things going all around us every single day. We are stressed. Our kids are stressed. Our nervous systems are on overdrive. Chronic stress directly impacts our eating habits and our relationships. And if we take a moment, that pause, it is a simple way to start what is a fancy sounding concept, which is nervous system regulation. You hear about regulation, this is it in practice. The pause, the breath, and specifically the exhale gives you an opportunity to cool the temperature, to let that dust, the glitter, whatever it is that you picture, to let it settle. That is regulation in real time. That is actually what we're doing just by taking a moment. My kids have called me out. They're like, you're sighing. I'm like, I'm not sighing. I'm taking a moment for me. Because, by the way, it feels really amazing to do it out loud. That's about me. It's not sighing. Pausing is the first step in connection and relationship building. It's actually the most powerful step. And I know nobody expects this. We think that it's time to hop on, to change everything, to go, go, go. We got to fix what we see. Pausing is powerful because it's breaking a cycle of the stress that you're experiencing right now. It's buying time, it's buying perspective, it slows everything down, in particular, our nervous systems. This is why my newsletter from Family in Focus is called The Exhale. It is that pause to breathe, to set our own nervous system, and to just cool my jets, because that's what I need. And I know that there are people who say repeatedly, I don't want to do nothing. They may have better English than I do. And yet we think that taking a pause and exhale breathing is doing nothing. That's just the lie that we've been told in this very productivity focused go, go, go society. I got a real taste of this during COVID. Those early days where like the world shut down, and I had the pleasure of having three teenagers in my house in lockdown. And there was absolutely nothing that I could do to address all of the different things that are like, what if, and this has changed, and everything had changed in their lives. The kids wanted action. They wanted me to say something, and I just stayed there with them. I took that pause, I took that breath. It was actually something where they were actually asking me, aren't you going to say something? Like there's nothing to say other than I'm here with you. And that pause, that connection builds right there. So here's actually some words that a mom shared about the power of slowing down. And so this is one of the moms that's been in Family in Focus over the course of a couple of years. And she said, listen, I've been working through a resurgence of disordered eating with my daughter. And the difference has all happened by slowing down to be able to recognize what's going on. So behaviors, AKA checking out those eating habits. I see those patterns. And now I'm able to communicate better with my daughter. It's powerful work, which sets you up for step number 2. So step 1, take that pause and that exhale. It is a gift for you. And now, when we slow down, we turn down the stress and we can start getting curious about patterns. Now, the patterns are not simply taking notes of what our kids are eating or, how they're behaving. It's actually looking beyond the surface. So parents often come to me asking, how do I change my kids' eating habits? And I'm going to offer that looking at patterns isn't just about what they're eating, how much they're eating, all the different macros. It's about really taking the moment to say, what's the environment? Why are they eating? What are the emotions that they're experiencing? What's the emotion I'm experiencing? What else is happening here? It's looking for the patterns that are beyond what we see with a quick, kind of the quick in the moment. We have to pause, slow it down to be able to say, what else is going on? And here's how you do that. So, again, first, you take that moment, that pause, and exhale. And it gives you the opportunity to just stand back just a wee bit from all of the chaos and get curious about the patterns. Ask yourself, and these are ones you can write down right now. Ask yourself these open-ended questions like, I wonder what's going on here. What patterns do I notice? What am I feeling? What is my child feeling? What's behind the meltdown or, the snack attack? And notice how the questions when we're getting curious about the patterns are very different from the ones that we typically ask when we're just in a how do I fix this kind of mode. And you may also notice patterns as you're doing this that are beyond the moment of right now, like generational cycles. And this is something that I get asked all the time from parents. They're like, where were you 25 years ago when I was growing up? My parents could have used this. And so parents are recognizing this is creating change in my home. This is actually what I want to see. I see so many cycles that haven't been working, ones that I don't want to keep on doing. And those cycles are patterns. And so you can identify a pattern that you want to change. And so again, just remember that, emotions are driving our behaviors. And if we can look at the patterns of emotions, we can understand so much more about why we eat the way that we do than any individual food choice. And this is really the heart of what we do in Family in Focus, which is why Lindsay is able to share with you, how she was able to slow down and get curious about patterns. And that gave her the ability to realize that she entered the Family in Focus program with the pattern of, thinking. So again, patterns, thinking that her child's weight was the issue. And then she actually shifted to observing that the pattern was actually her own struggles with her child's weight and concerns about where that was going. And so you're not alone. We walk through this together within the framework of Family in Focus because we are truly changing patterns for the whole family. And that's because of step number 3. So you got curious with the emotions behind the behaviors, and you're like, now what? What am I supposed to do? connection. So remember that control does not work. The more that you push, the more that they push back. This applies whether you're talking about toddlers, adult partners, ourselves. We hate being told what to do. In fact, again, the more you push, the more pushback you receive. You tell a kid to eat their broccoli and they'll be like, no. You tell me I have to go exercise for an hour every day, and my inner 4-year-old comes out and says, nope, you are not the boss of me. This is all normal. We've been pushing, but what we've really been missing is connection. Connection, specifically connecting to our emotions and understanding their role in our relationships with our food, our bodies, and each other. This is a new language for the vast majority of us. Thankfully, our kids are learning a lot about naming and feeling their emotions at school, the social emotional learning and curricula. And the thing is that we didn't really learn that growing up, whether it was growing up or I know in my emotion, or excuse me, in my professional training, again, there's a time and a place to feel emotions, but it was never here and it's never now. That's what adults, the kind of like the program we've been working on for so long. And so within Family and Focus, we learn how to talk about emotions, to play with them, not poking fun, but exploring in ways to experiment, to become more familiar with them. Because, again, if you remember what we were saying, the more that we practice, the more familiar we become, the more comfortable we get. And comfort and practice build confidence. You want to feel confident? You have to get the reps in. And so that's what we're doing all along the way. We're practicing. It's not about fixing or controlling or managing emotions. We're not coming in and trying to like dissect all of that out and swap. It's about noticing and listening to the emotions. What are they telling us? Again, they are not the problem. They are part of the information that we get to get curious about the patterns and say, what's really going on here? What's the stress? What do we need to actually cope with instead of using the food to cope? Now, there are times you're going to be like, I definitely want the food to cope right now. Absolutely. Again, that's normal. And so when we slow it down, we start having the opportunity to see where we get to make those choices and learn how to not be stressed by our emotions. This is regulation in action. We talk so much about emotional regulation, but it's like, what does that actually mean? Well, it's slowing things down so that we get to learn how to feel our emotions and then figure out where we want to go and not let our emotions kind of drive, what's the bad metaphor I'm going to use? Kind of like driving the car. That regulation that we do as parents ripples to our kids. That's what I mean when I say modeling what it is that we want for our kids. It doesn't mean being perfect. It means that we're learning and we're practicing and we're sharing that with them, what it is that we want them to do. And those ripples, oh man, when I say ripple, it's because the kids benefit directly from parent coaching that we do within our community of adults. So Steph shared that her 8-year-old son said, I love Wendy. She's making you a better mom. Remember how I said it's a community of adults? I've never met her son. He's benefiting from the work that Steph is doing. And here's another example. Candace was in a processing emotions workshop, and it was actually the first time that she had ever taken the time to really do what she had been asking her kids to do the whole time, to actually feel what's the emotion, to ask, like, what is this? And now, if you're thinking, I don't have the skills to do this, I want to be very clear. The only skills that you need now are the skills of a willingness to slow down. Step number one, a willingness to get curious. Number two, to ask, observe, just leave all that judgment to the side. And number three, a willingness to learn how to feel emotions, noting that that also means letting our kids feel their emotions, and they may be very loud and expressive about it because that's kids. That's kids. And yet not letting that create more stress for us. And then here's the big part. If you haven't noticed, this is all very, very different. This is not weight management, food management, emotional management. This is stress relief by pausing, pattern recognition, connection. We change our emotional eating with stress relief, first for us and then for our kids. This is how we change as we talk about, diet culture and, all the different ways that we are growing up in a society that is so focused on food and body and weight and management. Will we create the change in our homes? That's why Family in Focus looks nothing like any of the diet programs. It's parent first, connection centered. Oh my gosh, shame free, weight inclusive. And that is so needed for us and for our children. So let's quick talk about parent coaching. Coaching is about learning the language of awareness, connection, emotions, and relationships. And parents are leading the change. So this is the big difference. Like when we were talking before about what you see in the doctor's office. And again, I'm a doctor, okay? I recognize this. I see how often within that time frame that we have together, it's about prescriptions and, you know, um, therapies. And, even as you're getting more information out in the community about the hacks and the diets and the so-called experts who just make you feel worse. Coaching sees you as whole. It's about creating change from the inside out, about growth, which is so very different from the cutback and restriction approach that we have in our society today. So, within Family in Focus, parents tell me all the time, I came here to help my kids, but I've actually grown the most. My burnout is gone. My eating habits, now I'm doing what it is that I actually want my kids to do. That's the ripple effect. And the results are powerful. Stress relief for the whole family, starting with you, because you deserve it. It's not about everything with our kids. You deserve stress relief, better relationships, modeling learning and growth, not perfection. The end of using shame and all this, like, I need to be a better parent in order to be able to help them. You already are. You're here. You're here. This work is powerful, and you've already started by joining here today. So I want to invite you to write down one thing, okay? Whether you put it in the chat box or if you keep it on the notes for yourself. What is one thing that you're going to do differently today? From everything we've talked about, one thing. Feel free, you can put it in the chat box. You can keep it for yourself. Ultimately, it is for you. It's not for anyone else, because that's where we get to take it with us. Now, I will offer right here your quick guide. So I put together a one sheet guide. Is it emotional eating for in the moment, where you can come back to what was it? She said those 3 steps. And remembering the pause, getting curious. What is it that you're noticing? And then how do you create connection? So you can access with the link or with the QR code, and I'll also send it in the replay email. And let's just quick touch on Family in Focus, because I know I've spoken about it quite a number of times over the course of our chat today. And really, we're talking about a novel. Okay, so this is different. Evidence-based program based in stress relief, social emotional skill building for the whole family. And it's really with the primary focus of creating stronger relationships with food, body, and family through parent coaching. And it's not simply a program, it's the heart of my mission. My mission to help 1 million parents relieve stress, strengthen relationships with food, body, and family within homes where health feels easy, joyful, and connected. And it's based in a framework that is described in 6 different key areas. And if you notice here, okay, I do not want to overwhelm with this. Just notice how there's no particular set order, and yet relieving parent and child stress is so important that it's woven throughout the entire program. It is parent-centered, evidence-based, and we are touching on these topics every single time because they are so instrumental. So within Family in Focus, you get support through different seasons. It's a 6-month long program where you will have 24/7 access to all of the courses. We have a private portal. All the replays are available there as well. And you have community calls, weekly community calls with me to apply these lessons to your unique life and family and to bring all the questions. And we talk together. It, there's no like talking to the phone tree. This is like direct connection in really small groups. You don't have any of the hassles and transportation, or you don't even have to worry about the scheduling because you will get regular notices about the next calls. It's on Zoom, give or take 60 minutes. I mean, we stay until we have the questions answered, and it's personalized support within community. Here's the modules within the signature course, so the Family in Focus course. And we're talking about like really understanding the problem, why we're here, understanding the coaching model that I'm using. And I'm teaching you along the way because I want you to be able to use this in real time in your home and going forward. It is not about having, to turn to another expert or to have another, appointment. It's about learning the tools that work for you and your family. With those other topics, why are we always looking for food? So we get into, what's going on in our environment and emotions, as well as hormones, like what's going on with the food that we keep on seeking it. Beliefs, really understanding how our beliefs modeling what it is that we call healthy or unhealthy. Emotions and emotional eating are woven throughout the entire program, and how that is really helping us understand motivation, stress, addressing needs, sleep. So very critical in order to be able to have healthy habits is really understanding what's going on with our sleep. And that also helps us understand so much about the stress that we experience. Body image, so key, along with eating disorder prevention, relationships with food, body, family, all of it. So I got parents will say, "Hey, I've never learned about emotions." And I hear you. Again, that was not part of the training that I had growing up. And that's why I've included Emotions Lab. So this is offering, it's another self-paced course that you have complete access to, where parents are able to explore emotions and experiment again with changes that you can make right away. This is the social emotional learning for adults, adults. And you can do this from the comfort of your own home. This is not therapy. It is honestly play, which is also another part. So, a lot of folks will say emotions are just too uncomfortable. Yeah. So remember how when we were talking before that things are uncomfortable because we haven't had the practice with it. Well, that's why I include improv your health. So again, I have a background in improv comedy. It's not about poking fun. It's about getting out there and trying, experimenting, playing. And that's where I infuse so much of this into how are we going to approach emotions in a way that we don't feel like we're always talking about emotions. Well, that's why we play. And you can build stronger relationships and communication. It is amazing. And that is all included. I also hear from parents who say, I'm so overwhelmed and I cannot add anything else to my plate right now. I hear you. Oh, and by the way, you are so not alone. And that's where I really want to highlight the entire foundation of Family in Focus is about saying you've got a lot on your plate. We're not adding to it. You're going to be able to meet in community. So connection, community decreases stress. Really micro groups, teeny tiny, teeny tiny micro groups, so that you know that all of your questions will be addressed, all of your concerns. It's like being a VIP. You're right there. And disconnection, shame, and loneliness are underneath all of our biggest health concerns, which is why I believe that we need to connect and address that head on. And you don't have to schedule a thing. One less thing you have to do. There's also no rush. Remember how it's over the course of 6 months because so many parents, when you come in and you say, I have an 8, 12, 16-week program, they're like, oh my God, how am I going to do that? I got to make sure I'm there all the time. I got to, add this in. Over the course of 6 months, it's meant to create some breathing room, some flexibility, because we all have lives. And over that time together, you're going to find that you are feeling more calm and regulated, more present and confident, both in your eating habits and body image, and what it is that you're doing as you're connecting with your children and helping them create healthier relationships. That's what modeling is. It's helping them. It's not about perfection. And you're also going to have a plan for you and your family. So the program Family in Focus officially kicks off again January 1st. So I'm actually looking right now for a handful of parents that are like, yo, I do not want to wait until January. And I'm offering early access. Applications are open right now. Again, it's teeny tiny groups that are going to be starting in October. Before we get to that, sometimes I have these questions where parents like, I hear that your parents are, I just want you to tell my kid how to eat. And me telling your kid, okay, well, I have got some skills. You may have some Liam Neeson. I do have a very particular set of skills acquired over a very long career. And yet, me telling your kid how to eat is no different from everyone else, including you, telling them what to do. You tell a kid what to do, they're going to tell you where to go. We all do that. And so that's why we focus on connection. How do we create it? And how do we do it with our children? How do we help them without controlling, cajoling, and trying to convince them all the darn time? Now, going back to early access, the reason that I'm doing this is because I want to create success stories. Okay. So I have taken a hiatus over this past year, and I want to be able to have a core group of parents who are coming in as those early adopters that are going to be the success stories, the vision boards for the families that are starting in January. And that's where you get the extra months. By the way, this is completely bonus time. If you join right now, okay, you still have 6 months starting in January. And so we're going to have the super small groups and you still have access to all of the other programs as well. And so I'm inviting parents to apply right now. And if you enroll by the 25th, and it's actually the 26th, so it's Friday, then you will be able to get a $1,000 discount. Okay. So if you look on my website, okay, the program, a January start, is available for $2,000. I'm offering you $1,000 as a discount to get more time in these micro groups because I want you to succeed. I want you to succeed. And I'm also actively looking for families of many different backgrounds because I, again, want to be able to share that this is something that we have such a diversity in the families and how we can help. Now, the other big thing about joining right now is let's just admit it. It's that time of the year coming up, the holidays, ripe with food and emotional eating and all the struggles that come with it. And so you get to jumpstart that holiday fun, okay? Let's call it out by joining early access to be able to help with relationships during some of the most challenging times of the year. And, it's something that we're going to be testing out a few new programs and assessment surveys all along the way. So you're helping me help you and help others because Family in Focus is evidence-based and creating evidence. So be a part of it. Um, I'd love for you to consider, are we a good fit? So you can click on the button. I also have the link down below to be able to apply for early access. So this isn't something you can just go in and buy because I want to make sure we're a good fit. Because again, I want to see folks succeed. Absolutely. I want to make sure that we are all on the same page here. And so if you're like, this is a heck yeah, bring it on. Bring it on. Now, we're going to open up to all the questions here. And some of the questions I do just want to call out real quickly. What about my family? So, whether there's so many questions about, I have co-parenting, we have different homes, different generations, foster families, exchange families. One kid is bigger, one kid is smaller, one kid is eating more, one kid is eating less. One has a diagnosis, others don't. Neurodiversity, 2S LGBTQIA plus. I need to be able to say that a little bit more smoothly. And yes. Yes, I'm a weight inclusive, family inclusive pediatrician with a neurodiverse family and creating a community where we share that all feelings are welcome and all loving families are welcome. So, yes. What about my other relationships? Is this only about eating habits? So, let's bring this back one last time. Okay. Family in focus helps in so many areas because the tools are not just about controlling food and people and portions. This applies to so many different areas. And so Steph shared that, she thought that she was coming in again, concerned about a child's weight. And she said, you know what? I realized afterwards that I've benefited so much. She's a teacher. And she's like, I came in so completely burnt out. I didn't realize that's what was going on, but that's what was happening. And now it has improved so much more for her because she sees where she has control over the environment that she wants for her and her kids because it's all about connection and relationships and connection and relationships to what is most important to you. So I invite you to apply. And there is the link. And then lastly, I also offer that if there are any questions offline, feel free to reply to any email that you get from me. And as well, you can always send a direct email. I